Wednesday, March 25th. Hopefully you are all safe and sound. We still don't know what's going on in the city of Tampa. Apparently the mayor is going to call some sort of a shutdown or some sort of something on at midnight tonight. But until then, we keep soldiering on. Many of you on the call today know us. You've been here before. This is our new reality. My name is Jim Marshall. This is Clint Babcock. And this is Sandler Training. We're coming to you from our training room in Tampa at Rocky Point. We are maintaining social separation here. Did we measure? That's about 6 feet. So we're good. So why are we here today? There is a new reality, and we're going to share with you some best practices and some ideas that many of our clients are already implementing, they're already using. For those of you that are new with us, some of these things are going to be commonsensical. Some of them are going to be, you're going to say to yourself, you know, maybe we should implement that. So our training is all virtual. We will be doing that for the foreseeable future. Our goal today is to provide you with some tips and ideas that maybe you can put to use in your business. As we go, you're welcome to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to send in some questions. We are monitoring those and we will answer those as we go, so don't be shy about that. I think due to the number of people on the call, we won't have the opportunity to interact, but we will answer your questions at the end of our session today.
How many people we have on the call?
I think we've got maybe 100, 120, something like that. Okay. So anyhow, don't be shy about asking questions. Hopefully you can see the screen already. This is going to be a discussion between Clint and myself. Again, as I say, sharing best practices. So let's dive in. Surviving and thriving in uncertain times. It's certainly a very serious period of time in our business, in our environment, in our city, in our economy. But we've seen these before. This is what we call the new normal. Some of you have been through these times before, many of you have not. But we've seen times like this before. And what that means is that, for example, in 1987 Black Monday, then back in November, this is what this is the Financial Times Stock Exchange graph from November of '87. That's where the economy was. That's what happened. We bounced back from that. The dot-com bubble in 2000, the NASDAQ Composite Index. We saw a huge spike there. We returned to some degree of normalcy. Some dot-coms obviously survived well, Google, Amazon, etc. But again, we got back to the new normal. Here was 9/11, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, both before 9/11 and after 9/11. Here again, it was some unprecedented times. We survived that. The financial crisis, personal consumption expenditures, how they held up. Here again, this was the financial crisis at kind of like 2009-ish. What happened here in terms of the stock market, in terms of the crash, and we came back from that. And the oil crisis, same thing. We had a spike in pricing, then a deep dip in pricing. We came back from that. So the message here, the point is that we've been through these times before, certainly not this kind of thing, certainly not this brand, but we've been through tough times before. And the purpose of our talk today is to explore what we need to do in terms of our mindset, where we need to be technique-wise, where we need to be attitudinally, and behavior. Those of you that are familiar with Sandler Training, you know that what we call the success triangle is absolutely paramount in order to get a handle on your business. It's going to dictate how well you do going forward. The success triangle comprises behaviors, attitudes, and techniques. And as I say, we want to share with you some best practices in that regard. So let's start with behavior. Clint.
All right, so we got to look at what are the things that we can control, what's within our control and what isn't. So as Jim teed up the behavior, attitude, technique triangle, every single thing we teach, and for the most part, everything you put in to your job and your work world is going to fall into one of those three categories. And our goal today is hit on each one of those categories and see how they kind of tie in together in the areas that we need to focus on and what's changed. And here's the reason why we're starting with behavior first. We could have started with attitude, we could have started with technique, but really the ultimate thing that's in our control initially is our behavior and what we decide to do. Go ahead, Flip. All right, so as we start looking at this, those of you that are Sandler colleagues, Sandler clients of ours, you know the cookbook, right? The cookbook is what we call your playbook, if you will. We call it understanding your numbers in your business. So to what extent do you have to make dials, calls? How many appointments do you need to have? What's your pipeline need to look like? It's you as an individual producer or manager overseeing what are the data and what are the metrics that have to be done in order for you to produce the kind of outcome that you want. And we just very politely call it a cookbook, because those are the ingredients that's going to go in to make up what the outcome is that you need to have. Your cookbook's changed. Your cookbook has changed. Maybe some of the activities that you used to do can no longer be the same activities that you're going to be doing moving forward in this new normal, especially those of you that are now working from home and don't have the opportunity to get out in front of your prospects as easily. So here's what you can't do anymore. Right. I wouldn't be too surprised, though, within the next 30 to 60 days, some of the typical networking events that you went to don't get put on to be virtual networking events. We've talked to a couple associations and groups out there that they're going to be working on that. Trade show. The trade show industry isn't going to go away. They're going to try to figure out a way that they can do those virtual. But until then, a lot of these things just aren't happening. And we've already talked to a lot of our clients that have had trade shows and events that have had to be pushed off for the foreseeable future. So when you really step back and look at what have you done over the past year or two or three in order to prospect and get yourself out in front of the opportunities you need to be out in front of, there's certain things that don't exist anymore. However, here's what we want you to do as you start redefining that cookbook is take a look at what needs to be done now, right? You're going to have to be a lot more and more virtual in what you do. Your outreach is going to be virtual. So let's talk about looking at video conferencing, right? Your use, if your company doesn't have a video conferencing platform that you're using, please get one. The top three are GoToMeeting. We're using Zoom, of course, and Join Me is another one. Your outreach with your prospects and customers, we can still get that face-to-face, but now we've got to be really, really comfortable in reaching out via a video conferencing. So in your meetings that you're setting up, right now, the appropriate response is, hey, look, would you mind using a video conferencing platform? Here's ours so that we can have the opportunity to be able to view each other. And you got to give them the setup, because not everybody that's been asked to go work from home and not everybody that you're going to be wanting to reach out to is going to have those video capabilities, but a lot of them are. And a lot of them are moving that direction. So we've got to be able to hit that. LinkedIn. If you've been around Sandler at all, you know we've been so much on the LinkedIn bandwagon for quite a long time, even to the point of saying, hey, LinkedIn is the center of your prospecting universe. If you put LinkedIn in the center, and every other activity that you have has got to lead into LinkedIn. Your CRM has got to lead into LinkedIn. Your cold calling has got to lead into LinkedIn. Anybody that's a prospect, are you connected to them on LinkedIn? Your business may be very similar to ours over the past week. Jim and I have been reaching out personally to every single one of our clients, making that personal touch. Every single client you have, customer, go back through and are you linked into them? More and more studies are showing that the more digitally connected we are to our current clients, the closer we're going to be, and the more they're going to stay tight to us, and the harder it's going to be for them to ever leave us. So look at LinkedIn as a center of your universe. Your approach call. If you are, in a traditional sense, making an approach call, a cold call in any way, shape, or form, we've got to adjust that and make that different. You just can't open up into a sales call these days and, and without some empathy. And when we get to the technique portion, Jim and I are going to both show you how we've shifted and adjusted the technique of making that approach call in both an outbound call as well as through an email. So we've had to take what we know and just refine these techniques differently, but we still have to do it. Emails, you're going to see that. And then I just got off a training session with one of my clients that said that they had to cancel about 5 different events that they had coming up over the next quarter. And we talked about how many of those events could they move to be done virtual. So here's what I would encourage you to do if you can. Still think about what kind of events could you do. Very similar to what Jim and I decided to do last week. We said, hey, let's put on a webinar about how things have changed and about how we can help the community, help some of our clients, and be able to put events out there that will draw in the kind of audience that you're looking to draw into, as well as maybe service some of the clients that you've had. My belief is in your office, maybe it's you, maybe you've got somebody that could carry on a 30-minute webinar and everybody could prospect to be able to bring people into that. So think about what you have there. And I think you're going to be able to find that the behaviors, the things that are within your control and your cookbook have to change. So what I would encourage you to do right now is think of all the activities that you got to do and now put some metrics and put some numbers to it. How many? How many new opportunities you need? Therefore, how many reach outs? How many LinkedIn invites? How many emails? What's that new normal in your world in order to put that cookbook together?
And we've helped many of our clients put their cookbooks together. Many of you on the call today, we worked with you on that. Those of you that we have not worked with before, if you need ideas for elements that go into your cookbook, just tap a question into the chat box and we'll be happy to answer those questions anytime we can. Well, we left some time at the end for some Q&A, so we'll get to that. But don't be shy about asking for ideas and suggestions, because what you see here are largely the result of what many of our clients and customers have been doing over the last several months. Double up on the calls. If you're home or if you're working virtually, now is a great time to double up on the calls and the outreaches that you were doing with your clients and customers. I remember way back in the day when I was starting in my sales career, many more years ago than I can recall, up in Michigan, my boss used to say that, you know what, when the weather is bad, if it's a snowstorm, if it's a rainstorm, that's the time you want to get in your car and you want to go see customers and clients because nobody else is seeing them. I don't know how many of your clients or your competitors, I should say, are out contacting some of their customers and some of your prospects. My guess is not as much. You want to be the one that's going to be proactive and make that outreach to not just clients and customers, but even prospects, just to check in and see how they're doing. We'll show you how to do that in just a second. Watch the trouble line. The trouble line is something that many of our people are familiar with. And what the trouble line is distinguishing between what we call pay time and no pay time. Pay time are those activities that are designed to put money in your pocket, whether they're selling, servicing, prospecting. No pay time activities are activities that don't lend themselves to that. So for example, it's very easy to get caught up in no pay time activities during this particular point in our timeline. As an example, you might see some headlines like this: watch these Hulu shows or Amazon Prime shows. Here's some shows to binge watch during the coronavirus. When binge watching goes viral, what to watch and stream on Amazon. There's a time and a place for that. I suggest to you that the time to do that is 9 p.m., not 9 a.m.
So binging out on season 9 of The Office?
Well, that's okay.
That's okay?
That's okay, yeah, right. We can do that.
All right.
We can do that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So you got to be selective in what you
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Behavior. We're still on that. Don't focus on the money. I had a call from a client on Monday this week. He said, how do I get this client to close, this prospect to close? Don't focus on that now. If they want to buy, they'll buy. Focus on giving back. Focus on how you can be a resource for them. Our feeling is that if you focus on servicing your prospects and your customers, the money will come when things return to the new normal. Don't worry about closing deals. Just worry about the well-being of your clients and your customers and your prospects. Focus on customer growth and satisfaction. Your existing clients and customers, figure out how you can be a resource to them and help lighten their load. As an example, we have offered to every single one of our clients to facilitate any kind of staff virtual meeting that they want to have, whether it's putting in best practices, whether it's troubleshooting or problem solving. Focus on how you can help them in their business. And FUD toss. This is an exercise I'm going to suggest to you. It's called FUD toss. What I'd like you to do is, at some point in time, grab a piece of paper. Grab a piece of paper, and I want you to write down all the things that you are afraid of. What are you fearful of? Recession? Are you fearful of loss of income, loss of revenue? Are you fearful perhaps of loss of job? Write them all down. What are some of the other things that are going to be concerning to you? FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Write them all down. Take the piece of paper, crumple them up, and throw them away. I'm not saying that we can't be concerned about those things, but if they let them consume you, that's going to get you in that gray matter between your ears, and it's going to cloud your judgment, and it's going to affect you in a very negative way. Write them down. It's therapeutic. Write them down. Toss them out. Provide counsel to your people. Again, be a resource to your people, not a burden. Ask them how you can help. Be a resource. Provide counsel. Don't come across sounding like a salesperson, because nobody wants to hear it at this particular point. Let's talk about attitude.
So when we get into attitude, and Jim, you're going to cover this Fadada, but let me set this up here for a second. Our belief, and follow me along here, if you could draw a line between behavior and up to attitude, we call that the commitment line. That's a commitment line that you're staying focused on your behaviors. A lot of people, we take an opposite approach here at Sandler. A lot of people believe attitude's everything, and it's at the top of the triangle for a reason, because it is. Attitude and your mindset around things are so absolutely key. However, between behavior and attitude, there's only one that we are 100% in control of, and that's our behavior. And a lot of people say, well, no, you can control your attitude. Well, then why would you ever choose to have a bad attitude about something, right? So what we try to do is get people to realize, yeah, attitude is so absolutely important enough that we're going to spend some time talking about that. But what drives that is your behavior, which is within your control. So when Jim said, hey, double up on calls, what do you got to do? You got to do things, you may have to do things more of what you have been doing, or you may need to do things differently, or you might need to do things better. So you got to look at, what are you doing now in order to get the results that you need to produce now? And those are going to start with behavior. So cover Fadada.
These are the stages of grief that you may be familiar with. We're all going through a period of change and a period of emotional upheaval. I think what we need to do is we need to recognize that what we're going through is normal. It's not unusual. We all go through it at certain points in time. It stands for fear. It stands for denial. The stages of grief, the stages of crisis. We go through fear. We go through denial. We go through a period of anger. Why is this happening to me? We go through a period of depression. Oh, woe is me. I call it the Eeyore syndrome from Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore the donkey. We go through a period of anger and depression, and then we go through finally acceptance. Now this is the new reality. How do we deal with it? Understand that it's normal. It's natural. It's understandable. Acknowledge it, and then be prepared to move on.
So it's kind of the stages of change, right?
Stages of change.
Stages of change. And most people don't like change. I'm one of them. I don't like change. I process through change. I transition. So when Jim comes to me and says, hey, I got this new idea or what have you, he's learned enough to be able to say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Here's what I'm thinking. Why don't you give it some thought and let's talk about it later in the week. right? So that I have a chance to be able to process through that kind of change and go through this fairly quickly. So reacting versus responding. Reaction, emotional, respond, adult, right? So be thinking about the things that you're dealing with. So as you're working with your prospects and customers, that things all of a sudden got a little bit more difficult. Underneath this, you got to be thinking, all right, before I react in a certain way, do I need some time to sit back and think about what the right kind of response is going to be? And calm, have a little bit of calmness in your attitude and your mindset. Next.
Yeah, one of the people that we have an association with, Zig Ziglar and his son Tom Ziglar. This was one of Zig's favorite sayings, his favorite tenets. When you're faced with dire circumstances, if you're faced with some sort of negative things happening in your life, there's a difference between how you react and how you respond. We want to focus on how we're going to respond. Reacting is normal, but now we go through those emotions. How are we going to respond?
Okay. Identity versus role. So this is a theory that can be put into place, and let me explain. Let me start on the role side. So this is a core concept within Sandler. We all carry on a number of different roles. If I were to ask you what all roles do you play role as a business owner, you play role as a salesperson, you have a role as maybe a father, a mother, a brother, a sister. And at any given time here, we are doing really well. We're up here in the winner category in our role, and sometimes we're just not doing so well. So maybe over the past week or so, business has been a little bit tough. Things have been harder, and you're not feeling so good in your role area. This is where we take this dividing line and we say, hey, understand your difference between your identity versus your role. Your identity is the core you. It's the core values, beliefs, and how you truly look at yourself. And know that everybody that's a Sandler client, everybody that we work with, we say, look, your identity is a 10. You are absolutely worth a lot. Those of you that have dogs, you'll understand what I mean when I say, look, when you come home and that dog is happy to see you and you had a pretty crappy day, they don't really care. They're just happy you're there and you exist and you are there. You're an I-10 to that dog. Right? You may have had the worst day ever, but they don't care and they don't know. They only see you as the identity of the person that they want to be around. So that's the part. So the reason why this is so key is we're going through some tough times, and a lot of us tend to take that into our emotional being, into who we are. So understanding this separation increases what we call your emotional bounce back rate. Your emotional bounce back rate is how fast can you get over something that happens to you that's in your role. And in business and such, bad stuff happens. If I were to ask you what is the absolute most frustrating thing you have to do in your job, you might say, oh, when I have to reach out and somebody's not happy that I reached out to them, or when I had an appointment set up and the person doesn't show up or they cancel. Or, gosh, I had this great prospect in my pipeline and now they've ghosted me, right? Understanding this is that's all on your role side. It's not on your identity side. And here's the Sandler rule that ties this together. You will perform in your role with how you see yourself conceptually. You will perform in your role with how you see yourself conceptually. Somebody that sees themselves as a non-winner down in that category, here's that person that you may know that hopefully you don't know them that well anymore, but this person externalizes everything. Oh, this happened to me. Oh, this got taken away from me. They take zero responsibility for any of their own successes or failures. The at-leaster on their identity, if they're at that at-leaster mode, here's these people. I want to do better. I wish I was better. But I just don't see myself as being any better than what I am now, and therefore I'm not going to work on it or do anything. The winners, they're going to have bad days, but consistently, they're always going to perform at their top on a regular basis. So right now, the reason why we think this is so important for everybody to really grasp is there's only certain things within your control. These are all happening in our business and our personal lives, but they don't have any bearings on you as an individual and as a person. Last quick story, and then I'll kick it back over. We'll get to the next one. I've been through three major setbacks in my business career. The economy things that Jim mentioned earlier. The dot-com bust was the first one. I was in the technology business at that time, and then the recession, and now this one. Back in the recession, I was about 3-4 years into the Sandler business, and Jim and I consistently got calls, and we were doing probably 3 or 4 sessions a month for various different entities and associations out there of unemployed executives and unemployed workers. And ultimately, when we were asked to come out, it was around job prospecting and interviewing and how to separate yourself from the competition. And one of the things that I would always talk about is this identity versus role aspect, because we had, sometimes 100, 200 people in the audience, and somebody would come up to me and say, look, I worked for the same company for 20, 25 years and I got laid off. And now that you explained identity versus role, I tied my identity so much into the job that I had. And now I don't feel so good about myself. So once they started to understand that, look, your R is not who you I, they started to be able to process that a little bit better and just recognize they had to go find a new role that has no bearing on their identity.
Yeah, it's and the reason we spend so much time on attitude is because the times that we're going through now, they can really, really screw with your mind. I don't remember if it was Ben Hogan or who it was that said in golf, the most important piece of real estate are the 5 inches between your ears. So same thing happens here. Our attitude is going to impact everything. We have to have that give versus take mentality. Don't worry about taking things from your customers, your clients, your prospects. It's what you can give. Again, how can you be a resource? What can you provide to your customers, to your clients, to your prospects that are going to help them weather the storm? Focus on that. We've got to maintain a productive mindset. What can we do in order to move that ball further down the field? We want to be in a position to do that when the day comes when things are back on the upswing. Here's a non-productive mindset. These are actual headlines taken from the internet one day last week. This pandemic risks bringing out the worst in humanity. The rise in cases comes as the top infectious disease expert warns multitudes could die. This does us no good. You know what? The news at the end of the day, when you get home at night, is going to be the exact same as it is today. No sense dwelling on that, no sense reading that stuff. It doesn't help our mindset. Just avoid clicking through that stuff. And we want to focus on what we can control. We call this the Stoic attitude, the Stoic philosophy, which is differentiating between what we can change and what we can't change. What we have influence over and what we don't have influence over. The one thing that we have influence over, bar none, is our behavior and our activity. Focus on that and watch your attitude change. And avoid the drama triangle. This is something called Cartmans Triangle. I'll let Clint get into this because this is really important, I think.
Yeah. Before we dive into this, we're 30 minutes into this, and we got a couple questions. So, Jim, I'm gonna throw this to you, and you have full right to reverse it back to me if you need to. All right. So, write-in question from our studio audience. How do we refocus techs away from the real fear of going into homes? So based upon the question, it sounds like it's a company that has to go out and go into homes in order to be able to do their business, and it's the technicians that may have to go into that. How do we refocus them away from that fear of walking into some stranger's house and that house being in some way, shape, or form contaminated? Who knows?
Okay. So if you're a technician, you have to go into homes. You don't know what's on the other side of the door when you walk in. I think one of the things you have to do is consider the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, we all acknowledge what that is. Best case scenario is there's nothing to worry about. What can we control? We can control our behavior, and we can control our approach. We have to have the mindset, if we take the proper precautions going in, gloves, whatever it happens to be, that you just have to prepare for that and say, this is a reality of the job. Reality of the job. I'll give you an example. One of our clients owns a very successful pest control company. They have taken the precautions ahead of time in those instances where they do have to go into a home and service the home. All those precautions are taken so that they know that their risk is minimized going in. Now, the flip side of that is you can simply refuse to participate. That's burying your head in the sand. I don't think that's very productive. If you take the time to consider worst case scenario, make allowances for that, I think that's the proper approach to take.
Yeah, I agree. Another client of mine that does have people that goes out to the homes, what they did is they brought their techs together and they had an open brainstorming session about all the things that they can do in order to be prepared for that. So they allowed the techs to be part of that solution that helped bring down the fears. And some of the things that they came up with were just absolutely genius about how to be able to, to keep that engagement away from the customer. And here's one of the things that came up that was so key. There's a lot of people out there that are ignoring this. And that, and they're basically that greet you at their house, and I can imagine a tech comes to their house, they're putting their hands out to shake their hands. And what they did is they even worked on, hey, I really appreciate you look, based upon everything that's going on, I'm concerned for your health and safety because I'm out at a lot of homes on a regular basis. So they've been taking the onus on themselves, and they worked on that tactic and technique about how to be able to keep that separation when you're going to have some homeowners that really don't really care. So we put in those kind of techniques in order to help reduce that person's exposure to a potentially harmful situation to that tech. So hopefully that was able to answer your question. Jim, the second question we had is, how do I deal with my cat that looks at me like, why am I home so much?
Well, one solution is put the cat outside and ignore it. But I don't know if you want to do that, but yeah, the cat could be a problem. I'm not qualified to talk about cats.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. We'll respond back to that question personally, because we understand not everybody is dealing with a cat situation. All right, drama triangle. So if you all were in my class and we were diving into this really, really deep, here's the question that I would ask you, and I'd ask you to raise your hand. How many of you have ever been in a dysfunctional relationship?
Never.
Okay, since I can't see you, I'm just assuming that hopefully almost everybody's raising their hand. So we call this the drama triangle, and it's by a psychologist named Cartman that kind of said, look, whenever there's dysfunction or whenever there's a lot of emotions involved, you can see somebody jump into one of these three roles that are being played out here. So you've got three roles. You've got a persecutor. This is the one that's really coming at you. This is the one that's blaming you. In the drama world, this is the antagonist. If you're a Superman, Superman believer, or that's your favorite superhero, it's whoever's trying to blow up Metropolis or blow up the world, for that matter. The rescuer. This is the person that jumps in to save the day. This is Superman. Anybody that jumps in and says, hey, I can help you, that's me. And then we've got the victim role. This is the one that is, everything's happening to them. Woe is me, and I just can't get myself out of this without some help. So at any given point in time, we're playing these roles. If we get drawn into this, here's what makes this really, really work. What's our job to do? Is stay out of here and not get pulled into this. And by understanding this and putting this into your world, it's understanding the difference between acknowledging and agreeing. Acknowledging and agreeing. So if somebody in your world is talking about how bad things are and is pulling you down, they're playing the victim role. They're in that. And if you jump in there and agree with them and add your comments and say, hey, that ain't nothing, let me tell you how bad I got it. Now you guys are both rolling in here and you're both playing the victim role, and you are now caught in the drama triangle in some way, shape, or form, because then one of you is going to start trying to rescue the other person, and now you're caught into this. If you, and that's agreeing, if you just acknowledge and say, yeah, hey, I understand, I hear you, yeah, but you don't jump in there with your own sad story and what's happened to you, now you're putting this to play and you're staying outside of the drama triangle and not getting caught into this. For those that have been around Sandler a while, you know a lot of what we teach is all based upon psychology. This is a little bit of infusion of psychology into the day to make sure that you recognize when you're getting drawn into that perpetuation of negativity that's going to really impact your attitude on how you're going about your day or your work. Okay.
And the last one is utilizing your resources. Each and every one of us, if we stop to think about it, you probably have more resources than immediately come to mind. Friends, families, mentors, coworkers, former bosses. Now is a great time to use the resources that you have. Reach out, contact them, because everybody is in a very fragile position. We just got off a call earlier this morning with a company that's contemplating closing their doors. Never thought that in a million years that would happen. Reach out to people that you know, that you trust in. We like to think that we're a resource. We don't have the answers, but we know a lot of people that have been in those situations. Reach out to people that you know and that you trust, maybe that served as a mentor to you in tough times. Trust me, everybody is of the mindset that they're here to help. People want to help. It's their human nature. Take advantage of that. The last thing we get into is technique.
All right. So if you have an approach right now that is, and how you're approaching a current customer and how that was maybe 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago and such, that's absolutely shifted. So one of the things we want you to think about doing is editing how you're making that approach. So you can't come right out and talk about pains, issues. You got to have the empathy that goes along with that. So that 30-second commercial, I'm going to give you a couple real quick ones that you can start to kind of work on. One is called the 20-20-60. 20-20-60. So if you're approaching a potential prospect and, here's what we know. 20% of companies right now, they're just trying to survive. They're trying to hold on to cash as much as they can and ride this through, and they are absolutely doing nothing proactive. And that's the case. So that might be your first opening. Hey, look, I'm reaching out. Here's what I know. 20% of companies, they're struggling right now. They're just trying to keep the doors open and stay alive. Another 20% of the companies, this is helping them thrive. It's been something that has actually helped their business because they're a needed entity in what's going on right now. And then the other 60%, it's business as usual. They may have to be doing more things at home, but they're still operating. They still have good cash flow. Things are going to continue to work for those businesses. Hey, help me to understand, which one are you in? Right? So that might help you to understand what stage they're in before you go in pitching any kind of products or services that you may have. Jim, next. All right? So here's a different and maybe a little bit more simpler way. It uses what we call an alternative approach or a menu approach in order to be able to say, hey, look, some companies we're finding, look, they're in this mode of battening down the hatches and just, not looking at doing anything to move their business forward, and that's okay, we understand. And then others are in a position to figure out, hey, how can we grow through this, and thinking and hoping and believing that this is going to be a sharper turn upwards within the next month or two. How can we make sure we're positioning ourselves as an organization? Hey, help me to understand, what situation are you in? So just you got to think about how you're making that sort of approach. Jim, hit the next.
How does this sound in the context, Clint, of an actual call to a customer or a client or a prospect? I mean, I think tonality here has got to be very important. Your delivery has got to be important. We've talked to a lot of people about the impact of the current situation on their business, and we're hearing one of two different situations. Some people believe that it's time to batten down the hatches, ride out the storm, and survive for another day. Others find themselves in the fortunate position that they can still grow during these times. I'm curious, what situation is your company in? The purpose is demonstrate some empathy, get them talking, get them engaged in conversation.
Yeah, now hit this one real quick. Hit that now. So here's what leads you into that. Look, before you go diving into much of anything, rapport questions, right? Hey, how are you doing during the situation? So the format here, take a look at this number 1 and number 2 here. You can interchangeably switch those based upon any kind of relationship you have already. If you've got a strong relationship and they're there's somebody that's already been in your pipeline, then you might want to ask them, hey, how are you doing? Taking that personal approach. And because you got somewhat of a relationship, you're going to get a very, very soft and warm answer to that. If not, then how's your company dealing with this? So I call it your company, then go into the 30-second commercial that Jim and I both just talked about. So, hey, what's happening with your organization? Have you guys, everybody been working from home? How's the company handling things? And you get that, most people are not too shy about talking about what their company's doing. That helps you to build some rapport there. Then you can ask, hey, what about your situation? Have you had to work from home for the first time and ever, or is this pretty routine for you? Now you've got that personal rapport aspect being built up. Then you can roll into that 30-second commercial about, hey, help me understand, where's your company? What are you doing? And that's going to make a nice progression through that. It's just simply taking the approach, looking at it differently.
Clint, we've had 2 other questions come in. One person asked the question, suppose that the bulk of my correspondence with my clients and prospects is email. We're trying to call people on the phone. We can't get anybody. There's voicemail. There's people not even answering the phones because the offices are empty. How do I use email or maybe some other social media? This actually happened with one of our clients a couple of days ago, and he took the time to come up with an email that helpfully gets them top of mind. Don't know if you can read this on the screen, but we'll share it with you. This is an actual email. They happen to be in the IT space. They do managed services, they do security software, they do IT systems and products. And here's what they came up with. The current health and economic environment is troubling for every business we work with, but we trust you, your family, and your loved ones are safe and healthy. We understand the critical need to keep your systems up and running in a business as usual fashion, which can be challenging when faced with all the new restrictions and uncertainty. Whether it's hosting virtual meetings with your staff and clients, securing their newly remote workforce with the hardware and software required to do so, or updating existing security patches, we are here to assist you in any way we can. Please don't hesitate to contact me at this email or the number below if we can help. Thanks and stay safe. Now, not a bad template to use. By the way, at the end of this, you're going to be receiving all of these templates. You're welcome to cut and paste and customize those to your use. Clint, question for you is, somebody wrote in a question, if our business model thrives on transportation, specifically commercial airlines, which are not currently shipping, do you suggest to refocus our tactics for when business resumes? For example, how should we effectively deal with the influx once things return to normal?
Well, so you've got current opportunities that may have been put off. So here's the biggest thing. Always, always, always keep your prospects on your calendar. And that may be pushing those calendar touches out another 3, 4, 5 weeks so that you don't lose those opportunities and you've got touch points along the way. Because if they get that disconnect, then away they go. And the second part of that question was, how do we do it when
things return to normal?
Yep. When things return to normal, here's what's going to be great is if you keep those prospects on your calendar, you're going to have a scheduled out week that's coming up on where your touch points are going to be and how you're going to be able to manage that. And then it's going to be core around time management and staying on that pay time activity. revenue is going to be so key, because if you're not doing business now, you're seeing a slowdown in your revenue. When that does come back up, then you got to be prepared and look at your work world and go, all right, how can I stay focused on revenue generating activities that are going to continuously work? So you got to just work smarter and tighter than you ever have before, because you're going to see an increased volume. So tactics that we teach are upfront contracts. Upfront contracts sets the expectations and sets the time parameters of the conversations. You're going to have to be able to do what you're doing now, just in a shorter, quicker amount of time. So being in control of that process is really what's up to you, versus letting things draw out.
Yeah, so as I say, you'll get this template, but the thing I like about this, again, is they are maintaining their top of mind awareness with their customers. This particular email is intended for customers that this company used to do business with, and they're attempting to recapture those customers. And so far, it's proven to be very, very effective for them. Practice, drill, and rehearse. One of the individuals we spoke to earlier this week said, I don't want to come across sounding salesy. And I agree, you don't want to sound salesy. This is not the time for that. But if you're going to be able to express empathy, if you're going to be able to express concern and care for your people, you got to practice it. You got to practice it. This can't be about you. It's got to be about them. There's no shame at all in practicing and drilling and rehearsing your approach, whether it's on the phone or whether it's by email or social media. And encourage brainstorming with your team. Encourage brainstorming with other people. We don't have all the solutions. We don't have all the answers. In our company, we're brainstorming constantly with 200 other offices around the United States. How do we deal with this? We're getting best practices from everyone else. Do the same in your company. The idea is, when we return to the new normal, we want you to be first in line. We want you to be prepared. We want you to have your clients, your customers, your prospects teed up when they're ready to do business again. We don't want you at the back of this line. In order to help you do that, we're prepared to offer you some resources that may be of help to you. We'll show you how to use them. A couple of things that we're going to do, we're going to give you access to what we call our e-learning library. This is a portal that gives you access to over 100 podcasts, webinars, white papers, videos that help reinforce some of these best practices. You'll get an email from us afterwards saying, if you'd like to take advantage of it, there's no cost to it. You're welcome to log in and access any of those materials any way you wish. The other thing we're going to offer you is an opportunity to what we do, what we call Crash a Class. We do training here a couple of times a week, usually a couple of sessions every Tuesday. As I mentioned earlier, all of those sessions are going to be virtual. If you would like to participate in any of those, we're happy to send you the link and give you the information to log in. And you're welcome to be a fly on the wall. Those take place every Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then another one from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Yesterday, I think we had 50 or 60 people on there. Everybody's from the comfort of their home, and it worked out very well. You're welcome to participate in that as well. And if there's any, we have a couple other questions here we want to answer before we sign off. But in the meantime, if you happen to have any questions, here's our email addresses, our contact information. You're welcome to call us. All of our phones are active. We're answering them all day long. You're welcome to reach out to us by email if you like. Social media, we're both on LinkedIn. What are we missing, Clint?
Well, we got this question here. So the question is this: what would an approach email or sample look like for a customers that are in leisure and travel and tourism, which is not essential? Which our hearts go out to those people that are in that kind of an industry that just is, just has gotten decimated with all the bars and events and everything that they live off of in order to be able to produce an income. So how would you recommend approaching, looks like an email sample for customers that are in this, which are not essential? And if you've got something, otherwise I'll go first and you want to add to it.
I have an idea, but go ahead.
Yeah, here's a little bit of psychology here. They probably don't want to hear from you, but you still have to reach out. So you got to maybe put that in a little bit of what we call a little bit of a drawback, a little bit of a pullback, and say, hey, look, I know, booking your next event or booking an act or a program for this is not at your highest priority right now. However, things will turn around here in the next few months, and we want to have the opportunity to have a conversation with you. So the key there is, depending upon the business and the industry you're in, you can get to the body of what's important, but the key is going to be acknowledging up front that, hey, we recognize this isn't the most important priority of yours, or we recognize right now in this, and I'm sure this is not the highest priority. So a little bit of pullback there up front, showing that you recognize the situation is going to help to be able to soften that sort of message that's being reached out. And even if it's over the phone, I've counseled some of my clients with that this year, or this past week, around starting out with that. Hey, hey, my name's Clint Babcock. My company's Sailor Training. Look, we're in the sales leadership development business, and I know right now that's probably training and development of your sales team probably isn't the highest priority that you have going on right now. But I'm curious though, how's your organization and company handling this from a outreach to your prospects and clients? And I'm putting that little bit of that pullback on up front in order to be able to get the dialogue at least started. So I hope that helps you. Jim, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the key is going to be empathy. I think we need to demonstrate to them that we understand what they're going through. Business is off. We're not sure if we're ever going to be able to open the doors again. We understand that no one knows what tomorrow's going to bring. Just here to tell you that I understand. We sympathize with you, and if there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. I don't know if you can do much more than that, but more than anything else, I think in today's environment, for people that are in that situation, they're looking for some reassurance. They're looking for some strokes. They're looking for a shoulder to cry on. Give them that opportunity.
Wonderful. All right. And last thing is, look, we've got no more questions that we've been asked so far. So hopefully we've covered this. Couple last things to maybe just anchor in your head. LinkedIn, take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Have you shifted and adjusted that? Virtual selling. Virtual selling means you're not going to be face-to-face as much anymore. So have you looked at some of the assets you're going to be able to use when you get somebody on a video conference call? It doesn't necessarily need to be a PowerPoint deck, but it could be. And look for those assets that you can use as great visuals to be able to show a potential prospect. And then lastly, also, now's a great time as you get tighter and tighter to your customers, asking them for references. I reached out to 3 of my customers this past week and asked them if they would do a quick 60-second video as a reference. And I've gotten one back so far where he was a VP of sales of a technology company, sent me a great little personalized video of himself just taken with a phone of a reference that when I'm doing virtual selling that I plan to put as part of a deliverable, so that they can see that, hey, we've got some really strong references out there. So be thinking about the assets that you have and the content that you're going to be able to leverage and use as you're reaching out to your prospects.
We got time for one last question?
And yeah, I think I have one.
We got time for one last question. Somebody just wrote in, said, what can I do to alleviate or reduce the fear and anxiety of my salespeople so that I can get them to do the behaviors? To me, the answer is simple. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Get them on a virtual call, have them express their fears, their uncertainties, their doubts, talk them through, acknowledge their biggest fears up front and say, all right, going forward, here's what we're going to do. And most importantly, solicit their feedback, get their input. Your salespeople won't argue with their own data and their own ideas. If they say, we need to double up our calls or reach out to these customers, now they're going to buy into it. Best thing you can do is over communicate with your people. You got another one, Clint?
No, this one's good. This one's good. As a marketing and or PR and PR firm, we want to be a resource without looking like ambulance chasers, right? Preying on companies in crisis. Any suggestions on the approach?
You could do that. That one of our clients sent us. No, seriously, you want to be a resource. Typically, when we talk to companies like yours, they have several issues in certain areas. It could be A, B, or C. How are you dealing with those things? Ask them questions. Don't give them answers. Just ask them questions. If you have a problem with this or this or this, maybe we can help. That's it.
I think you could work that 20-20-60 message into that. Hey, 20% of our of the people that we're talking to, look, last thing is on their mind is PR and marketing. They're just trying to survive. And hey, if that's the case, please let me know. Another 20%, they're really looking to grow, and and they're absolutely looking for ways to really uniquely put out their message in their story. And it's a great time for them to just really get wide and deep out there in their industry and their marketplace. And then another 60%, nothing's really changed. Everything's going okay for them, and but they might need to up some of the things that they're doing to increase their brand and awareness. Helping understand where are you guys, right? So I think that approach might fit really, really well into that, so that you're not being focusing on any kind of fear-based delivery or selling.
So we are almost up against the clock. In closing, next steps, we would share with you this. We will follow up with you with an email. I think you're going to get a copy of this if you like. Are we going to be sending out the recording? Okay, good. So we'll send that out. You will also get an invitation to take advantage of those free offers. If you want them, if you don't want them, that's fine. They're there for the taking. And in the meantime, if you need either of us, if you got just a crazy idea or a thought or a question, don't be shy to reach out to us either on email or via telephone. Some of you have our cell phone numbers. You're welcome to text. We're here, we're available, we're accessible, and we're here to help weather the storm. So thank you for participating, Clint. Thank you. Catherine behind the scenes, thank you. Have a great week, and we hope to see you or talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.